Hey friend, you are listening to the Pro Organizers Coach podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Brown. I'm a professional home organizer, decluttering specialist, and business coach. I created POC to empower you to reach new heights in your business. Through insightful interviews, expert guidance, and actionable strategies, we will equip you with the tools that you need to excel. This podcast is not just about tidying up spaces. It's about building a supportive sisterhood of passionate professional organizers. Whether you're a seasoned pro or you're just starting out, this podcast is for you. So let's do this. Welcome back to the Pro Organizers Coach podcast. On today's episode, I have COURTNEY JAMISON from Columbia, Missouri, and she has been a professional organizer for about 4.5 to 5 years. And we were talking about what we could talk about on the podcast today. And what came up for us was how when you're first starting your organizing business, you've either been a stay-at-home mom or you've been working a minimum wage job. Or for me, I was getting $12 an hour for over a decade. And then all of a sudden, you're supposed to go sit in front of a client, look them in the eye and say, that'll be $100 an hour for me and for what I can do for you. And so there's this kind of connection of they're paying for us, but then also mentally and in our mind and in our confidence level, how do we also then have that confidence, but also be okay with saying that'll be $100 an hour because we know the value that we provide. And so in the organizing industry, we were just talking about this before we hit record, of how it can get very fake very fast, and how when we take like Instagram worthy photos, it's pull real life out of it, take the photo, and then put real life back in. And so I want this to be a very real conversation of what we are dealing with as professional organizers, of how it is hard to sit in front of a client and say, okay, that'll be $75 an hour or $100 an hour. And the reason is because A, B, C, if they need the reasons, but also for us inside of ourselves to know why the cost is what it is and that that's okay. That's separate from us. That is not our worth, nor was $12 an hour my worth, right? I am separate from what society says I'm worth per hour. And so I just want to definitely dive into this. Thank you so much, COURTNEY, for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So tell me a little more about when you go sit in front of a client, what is coming up for you when you go to start talking about pricing? Or is it before you see the client and it's when you're at home? Or at what point is this coming up, I guess, is a better question.
I think when people ask for my services and ask for a rundown of my prices, and I just have the one sheeter that I send to them to say, here's what I offer, here are my prices. And then it gets a little tricky when I either don't hear back from a client or I hear back and they say, wow, that's a lot more than I expected. And I don't know then if I should have to try to justify that it will benefit them in the long run, that I really do feel like it's worth that, and that lots of other service industries make that or more than I'm charging for beneficial services. And it's hard too, because a lot of people that seem to need the service, not just want the service, but really do need it to get their lives on track, they don't often have a lot of resources to be able to pay for that. So I kind of try to walk a line of where I can put that price point.
Yeah. Well, and I think also that kind of brings up a good point. One is if we have that belief, right, of, oh, well, the people that really need it can't afford it. Then every time that we go to send that sheet out or someone starts talking price, that immediately starts to come up for you. Like, oh, well, they probably can't afford it, or whatever those things are, which truly has nothing to do with them, but everything to do with us and what we've been taught or what we've gone through in life. And so, because I had to deal with this, and I remember at one point there was a client that I flat out like had to tell her, okay, I understand, but is there any way that maybe you could save up some money over a period of time and then we could revisit this? And then I've also just like 2 months ago had a client, right? That when she called me, she was frantic. She wanted her whole home done. She had remortgaged their home and she had set aside $4,000 to work with a professional organizer. So it was very serious. The problem is when I went and started doing the sessions, we got quite a bit done, but she had like a 5-bedroom, 3-bath home, this huge house, and the whole thing was total chaos. And so on top of that, I'm also dealing with, she had some ADHD stuff going on. And so in between sessions, some of the spaces would go back to the way that they were before I came originally. And there's so many moving pieces. And then by session 5, all of a sudden she's like, oh my gosh, so my money's getting so low. This is so expensive. And every time I'm there, that's all she's talking about.
Oh.
Yeah. And it got to the point to where I actually a couple weeks ago told her that would be our last session together because it was getting to the point where I was getting so uncomfortable. I offered her a deal if she paid me cash because I was trying to help her out. After 5 or 6 sessions in, I was like, okay, listen, if you can do cash, I can do it for this price. It's a little less than what we had originally agreed upon because I understand when you only have so much in savings because we have a heart to help people. Like we want to help them. But at the same time, she let it slip this last time that I was there. Well, there's only $3,000 left in there and it's getting really low on the money. And I was like, okay, no. I'm taking a discount and I am doing this for basically nothing because you're giving me guilt that I am then accepting as my own. How did this even happen? Is how I left that day feeling like, well, hold on. I don't want to carry this with me.
Do you worry then when you have to sever a relationship? I've done that as well. Do you worry then about poor reviews or
no, because
implications from that?
I normally try very hard to either pass them along and act like my calendar's just so booked out that I just can't come back. And it's keeping it from having to get weird because I don't want to have to look at her and be like, listen, when you called me, you said you had $4,000. Now you're down to $3,000, but I've already done over half your home. And someone else would have already taken all $4,000 and not even blinked.
Right.
And I'm trying to help you, but now you're giving me this guilt. And it's just, to me, like I'm trying so hard to help people, but still to also be able to keep my self-worth and pay my bills and do my thing in good standing inside of myself, you know, that I think sometimes in business, it's just hard. And we have to remember it is our business. It isn't us. And it's hard in our industry because we are the business.
My similar situation that I had was a large home, 4-3, and they were moving into it and she wanted everything done just lickety split. And I think my quote, and this was the last time I've quoted something. Now I just work, per the hour till we're done. But I think it was between $3,000 and $3,500. And she was completely agreeable. And then you're getting into it and it became similar, like not wanting to continue or to pay. And then she wanted to make a deal. I guess I should have gone with a cash deal maybe, but she sold some things that were health patches or essential oils or something. And she wanted to give me a trade. And that made me frustrated because there was a lot of mom guilt and her telling me she's trying to support her family too. And can't we do things for each other? And I had to walk away from that situation. And that made me sad.
Yeah. No, I get it. Right now, I actually have a very similar situation where I thought I was going into a partnership with someone with a business. And I originally thought it would be 100% me owning it and paying them, splitting the cost of the income once everything's paid for the business, that would be 50-50. Like the profit we would split for the work, but I would still own the business because it was mine.
Right.
And then come to find out all of a sudden it was, okay, well, we need to like go to a lawyer and split this legally 50-50 and all these weird little pieces. And it broke my heart because it was with a friend. Like business is tricky.
It is.
Yeah. And I think it's hard to separate ourselves from that specifically in this because it's not a separate thing from us. It is us. But then again, it's separate from us, right? And like trying to keep the business hat on compared to the guilt hat or the mom hat or the, whatever hat, like keeping that business hat on and knowing that what we provide really is worth that. Because we're not making all of that money. We've got taxes, we've got expenses. And so all the things, the materials, the like just the gas, the time. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. And once it's all said and done, what are we actually making per hour isn't near what it says on that paper that you're showing them.
Right.
And so, I don't know, it's so tricky, right? But at the same time, maybe looking or figuring out a way that we can kind of switch what's happening in your mind and inside of you of this isn't me. This is worth what I'm offering. And like you said, you've learned that you used to quote like a big job with a lot of money. I've never once done that. The way I do it is I have them pay me per session because I guess maybe I still have some stuff to deal with on the inside of I could never walk into someone's home and say that will be $3,000. But I also think that kind of it almost sets us up for failure sometimes in the organizing industry because then it comes down to, well, what are they expecting for that amount of money and during those sessions and in that time? And as we're building that relationship over those hours, all of a sudden, it's like they think they deserve more and more and more.
Because they want to be your friend and not just someone that
has hired you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it gets very sticky because we're half therapist, half professional organizer.
It's true. That's why I bring in therapists when I have people who actually have a hoarding disorder.
And I mean, I praise you for working with those people. I tried one time and I had to send her to a specialist because, she started getting angry at me. So we did 2 sessions. Session 1, I just helped her make a path. That was all we did. And then session 2, once it got to the point of, okay, we got to start going through some of this stuff, all of a sudden she's yelling at me. She's kind of throwing a tantrum. Like it was a lot emotionally. And I was like, okay, I am not equipped to handle this, nor do I want to be the one to handle this. So I've got to pass you along, but I wish you all the best.
How did she handle that?
She was okay with it because I'm honest, but I also try to be very careful with my wording, especially when it's something sensitive like that. I'm not a blunt kind of person. And so it's more of just, being very soft and letting her know that I knew I couldn't help her in the way she needed to be helped. And it was more about helping her than it was anything for me, which was true. I was not equipped to help her with that. I was not the person. And I think that's also why I've set my business up the way I have. So I do a free consultation for a couple of reasons, but one is and I tell them this on the phone, I do a free consultation so I can make sure that I'm a right fit for you, but also that you're a right fit for me, that we are good to work together. Because I want the option to say no at the end of the consultation if I'm getting some kind of like bad vibe, because to work together through someone's home and through their intimate things, you have to connect in some way, energy wise and emotionally. If there's any kind of tension or like not meshness, it's going to go bad real quick.
Yeah. There are times that I wish that I had different rates for when people work with me, like the client works with me versus when I work by myself.
Yeah. And, honestly, that finding a way to do that is maybe what you need, because so like for me, I do the free consultation and then I charge per session, kind of like you said, you charge per hour. Yeah. Where I'm just like, listen, you owe me for that day's worth of work at the end of that day's work session. And that's what it is. And then we'll set up the next session from there. We can go ahead and put a few on the calendar, but payment is not expected up front. It's expected each and every day that I work this amount. And so then that way, at any time, if I need to back out or whatever, it's not like, oh, well, I sent them an invoice and they didn't pay me and blah, blah, blah. And, like it takes all the sticky out of it. It just is what it is. This is the price. Take it or leave it. This is what you owe me. You're going to pay me before I even walk out the door. And so setting that.
Have you had people argue with you at that when you get done with your session? Mine are 3 hours. Like
mine are 2.
Okay. Have you had you haven't had people argue? Okay.
Nope, that's not good. One person. Yeah. Because I make sure I know my consultation is in home, it's in person, and I spend at least 45 minutes to an hour. And I set those expectations. And when I go over my contract, I specifically say, payment is due at the end of each and every session. This is the amount. These are the forms of payment I take. It's part of my contract that I go over as if it were just a fact. Like you just walked into Walmart, this is the price. It just is.
That takes a lot of the emotion out of it if you can point to the contract.
Absolutely. And for me, that contract gave me confidence, right? Because understanding that they don't know that I made that contract. They don't know that I chose those options. They don't know any of that. They just see the contract. And if they sign that contract, then they owe me that amount at the end of that day. And if they're not happy, then we won't set up another session. But for sense. That day's work, I want my money. I did the work.
That's a good point.
And I think for us, keeping that business hat on of just stating it as a fact, not an idea or a thought we had. So that's why it's on the paper, but it's a fact. This is how much it costs to work with me for a session, period.
Do you have people who are friends or friends by association, friends of friends that then expect
that ask for the family discount? Yes.
Handle that.
I give a discount is what I do. I say everyone else, it's $300 for what you just got for like $200.
Yeah.
And I tell them that, like, listen, I'm charging you way less than I charge other people. But I still make sure it's worth my time. And I also tell them when it's friends and family, it's cash only.
Okay.
So it makes it worth my time. Because by the time you write me a check or it goes through a processing thing and then blah, 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 it's not worth my time. Like, it's just not. And so to make it worth my time, because you are a friend or a family and I'm giving you a discount, I need you to help me back out. Plus, I'm going to need a really good testimonial from you.
That's perfect. I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
And so in our business, there's other forms of payment. And I've been trying to explain to a lot of the newer organizers that I'm coaching with is, those first few clients you have, like the practice you're getting, the testimonials, the before and after photos, that is worth so much more than the actual money that you're getting those first few clients as you're building your business, that it's worth doing these discounted sessions at the beginning. Because if you don't, your foundation is off because you don't know what you can do for people. So you don't know how to explain it. You've not had any practice. There's just all these things that come up that just a few clients can give you the confidence and the knowing of how to explain yourself of what you can do. Calling all passionate professional organizers. Whether you are just getting started or you've been at this a while, exciting news awaits. Our revamped professional organizers coaching community is set to launch in September, and I am inviting you to be a part of this transformative journey. But hurry, enrollment is only going to be open from September 1st to September 10th. We're taking our commitment to your success up a notch. For just $47 a month, brace yourself for an enhanced experience that's designed exclusively for you. Every Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern, we will meet. Throughout the month, you'll immerse yourself in 2 impactful group coaching sessions, 1 dynamic workshop, and a focused co-working session. As if that's not rewarding enough, the first Sunday of each month at 6 p.m. Eastern brings a bonus enriching group coaching session. And girl, we know that life gets busy, so we've got you covered. Our replay vault ensures you won't miss a moment. Can't attend a live session? Catch up on the replays at your convenience. Plus, remember, your membership fee qualifies as a legitimate business expense, making this a smart tax write-off. Our sisterhood offers unwavering support, accountability, and boundless inspiration. Your journey is our journey, and together we will thrive. You can find the links in the show notes below, or you can go to proorganizerscoach.com/join to fill out your application, and we will see you in September. So let me ask you real quick, in your 3-hour session, what's your percentage of doing it with someone compared to doing it on your own?
Typically? Depends on the client, like the person. I have some that want to be completely involved in every decision. And then I have some that don't want any involvement, and I'll just make them a pile of things that I think, are trash. And then they'll go through that. I give homework. So that works out well. And then I have some that just kind of like hover around in the room or near, and I can, say, okay, I've got this pile. You go through that while I'm doing this other thing over here. So it varies.
Yeah.
It just depends on the person and their need. Like, I do work with hoarders, not exclusively, but I do work with a fair amount of people who are diagnosed with hoarding disorder. Sorry, I don't like calling people hoarders.
Absolutely.
And it is a completely different experience. And there is a lot of hand holding, and sometimes only just talking about sentimental items will get done in the 3 hours, and we won't get anything
accomplished, quote unquote.
But, yeah. Right. But we're moving towards a bigger goal. So.
Absolutely. So what made you go into hoarding? Or people with hoarding disorder?
So my mom was diagnosed with OCD in her younger years. I grew up as an only child of a single parent, and she had what some people might consider like an extreme OCD, and everything had to be perfect. And it was overwhelming for me as a child. I couldn't keep up with that standard. She developed breast cancer in the last 10 years of her life. For some reason, that switch with people who are diagnosed with an OCD hoarding disorder or OCD disorders, it's either one way or the other. And once it became 2 dishes in the sink, it didn't matter anymore. Yeah. It was all ruined, and she couldn't crawl back from it. And that was really hard to see. I always wanted to be able to help her and wanted to give her that assistance, but it's really difficult when you're that close to the situation. It's a lot easier when you're not related to the person to go in and talk to them. So I wish I'd been able to hire an organizer at that point for her. So after she passed, and I was able to go into her home and see the extent of it that I hadn't seen in 5 or 6 years been in the home. It was just a turning point for me to see up close and personal how people have this need, and how I could benefit from this firsthand knowledge to show people, that it doesn't have to be one way or the other. Also working with their therapist, that you can find a livable space. And trying to work with people with their sentimental items and their collections. And I know how much they treasure those and love those and find value in those. I want to support that, but in a real healthy way.
Yeah. Can I just say, first off, thank you for choosing that. Second off, I don't know how you emotionally don't bring that stuff home with you.
Oh, it's not for me. And I'm a minimalist in my daily life. So I get to come home to my home that only has 1 towel per person, and I don't have to worry about it.
Oh, no, not the stuff, the emotional baggage. I don't know how you don't bring the emotional home with you.
In my own therapy, going to my
Right.
own therapy.
Yes.
Yeah, I recognize that that's something that they're challenged with, but something that, I've been gifted with and also, had to walk through seeing my mom do it. I just have the heart to
Mm-hmm.
be there for people in that space because I can see how much it's hurting them, their family members, their relationship with their family. I want to try to restore as much as I can with that.
So no wonder you're having an issue with the price point.
It's tricky. There's a
Right.
lot of people that I work with on disability, downsizing from homes, not just because of desire, but because of necessity,
Mm-hmm.
because of, money issues. And it's hard. I want to do it. That's where my heart is, but it is hard to go and even tell a family member when they've hired me, this is what it is. And they don't understand why, it's not quicker. I can't just take a shovel to it. They don't have emotional attachments to all the things. And it's hard to walk with someone through that.
Yeah. How do you explain to family? Like, do you have kind of a little spill of making sure that from the get-go they understand like the realistic expectations compared to what they think should be happening? Because I think that as any professional organizer, right, whether we're working with hoarders, not, no matter what our specialty is, or if we're, no matter what we're doing, that difference of what clients think we should be able to do in the amount of time for that price compared to what we actually realistically, what any human could do in that time for that price. And so I just kind of wonder if maybe it's more of making sure on the front end that the client expectation conversation is a little bit more in depth than how does that go normally?
I think that is a good point. I am not very adept at that. I don't feel like I have a really good template for speaking with each family. I try to, if there's a therapist involved, talk with the therapist first. Sometimes I have the therapist involved, in the first session for the client, but sometimes for the family member too. There's really not a lot of understanding on the family's part, which then I can tell them my personal experience and say, I 100% understand where you're coming from because I have also been where you, the family member, has been, and I didn't have understanding either.
Right.
It still is frustrating because it's not something I could ever imagine living with or going through the hoarding situation, not just normal organizing, but I can't imagine living like that. So it is tricky to explain to families. I think when they see my real heartfelt concern for their family member or the client sees, that I'm not judgmental, I'm not coming there to make them throw away all their things. This is not my version of what I want your home to look like or what I think it should look like. This is to give you some peace and to be able to help you just to navigate your life in a more calm and peaceful way.
Yeah. And so is it normally the family paying you or the client, or kind of like what's that percentage?
With people who are diagnosed with hoarding disorder, more the family. I have more families who have reached out and said, my mom, my dad, my aunt, uncle, they need help. I'm willing to pay for it. And then we have a conversation about, does mom, dad, aunt, or uncle want this? Are they going to be obliging? Because you can't just run somebody over
Right.
to try to make them be organized or be what that family member wants. So that's another sticky part to it, I feel like, besides the money, but just being real delicate with people.
Yeah. So then you're in this balance between the actual person's expectations, along with the family member's expectations, along with the therapist's expectations. And you're like right in the center, like turning in a circle between the three.
Well, thankfully, therapists that I work with, I've got a couple that I work exclusively with, and they have really realistic expectations. And I've learned more realistic expectations from them so that I can pass that on to the client or family member that needs help, because it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be something that's going to be done quickly, but that's every job. We know that.
Yeah.
Every job is different. And that's why I stopped quoting times as well, because what I thought would take 3 hours, was ending up taking me 9 and 12 hours. And there's just no way that I can realistically quote those kind of things anymore.
Yeah, no, I always tell people, I'm like, I put it back on them where it's how quickly you can make decisions is going to determine how fast we get through this process. Because if you want to sit and talk to me about this item and how much you love it and why you love it and where it came from and so bought it. And if you want to tell me all those great things, I'm going to listen. But that's during our time. And so that's time that we are not actually making a decision about that item, which is fine. Exactly. I'm okay with that as long as you understand that also.
Hey, and that's really cheap therapy. Like I haven't found an organizer that charges more than a therapist.
That's a really good point, right? I went and got certified as a life coach because in my sessions, because a lot of my sessions are kind of, so they're not hoarders. They would consider themselves hoarders, a lot of them, but they are not. But they're kind of on the verge, if that makes sense.
Avid collectors.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I call them.
Yeah, I've used the term collectors a lot because it's a nice little way to put it with a bow. Right. Yeah. And so a lot of my sessions we're walking through this together, one item at a time. And you figure out real quick that you need training, emotional training of some sort to help them through. And so that's why I got certified as a life coach, is because I very quickly realized, like, I want to help them more emotionally, not just physically. And so that helped give me some tools of like things I could offer, or suggestions, or, kind of where you've got the partner of the therapist. Because they're not to that extreme, I don't have that partner piece. So I had to kind of add it to my tool belt, and as you're sitting here talking, are there any groups for people who specialize with hoarding disorder for the professional organizers to support one another?
So one that I benefited from, I took some training from, I'm blanking on her last name right now, Dorothy, that works on the actual show for A&E Hoarders.
Oh, okay. And, well, that's training, but I mean on the back end, like support, like a group, we
have a Facebook group where we talk to each other.
Because right now I'm in the process of building the community for POC. And I've been trying to figure out, because I know what we're missing in the industry is community, like this, conversations, and being able to support one another and realize that we're not the only crazy ones out there, that every other organizer feels the same. And to normalize a lot of this perfectionistic, being a professional organizer is like this perfect little whatever. It's the exact opposite.
And people want you to be the girls from Home Edit, and they want their pantries to look like Khloe Kardashian's, and that's unrealistic.
So unless you have a team of people living in your home with you, running behind you, picking up all your stuff,
right?
It's not realistic.
When people find out that, or I casually mention, I've got 8 children, and, I've had to find ways to organize all of that as a business owner, as a single parent of a large family, and that my goal is to make it easier for them to, live their life, but also to maintain it, because a lot of those things that they come to me and they see on TV aren't maintainable. Is that a word?
Yes.
It's just not realistic.
No. Yeah. And especially a lot of A, clients, but B, new organizers, right? Don't get that. And that's what I'm trying to disrupt, is that like fakeness in the industry, right? That's all fine and dandy for like an Instagram post or like, whatever. But for real life, it does not exist. And I think a lot of us as professional organizers are out there thinking, am I the only crazy one that doesn't ever get a Khloe Kardashian pantry as a job? Please come pay me hundreds of dollars to do a Khloe Kardashian pantry. Like, that would be fantastic.
no one never touches it because that's not a real pantry anyway.
Right. Like, and so I think the piece we're missing, and my point is, as professional organizers, we're missing the community and like the camaraderie of being able to communicate with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I'm trying to build that's releasing next month is my membership.
For sure. Yeah. Learning from other organizers too, and what has worked and what has helped and what has failed miserably for other clients that have that have that diagnosis. It's definitely been a learning curve, even as much as I was, steeped in it with it being my own family.
Yeah. So, well, you know, it being your own family, then you got like certified through an actual course, which most people don't. Mm-hmm. And you're still coming up against roadblocks. So I can only imagine for the person that's like, hey, they didn't grow up in it. They didn't take a course. They just decided that that's who they wanted to help. And then they start trying to build this business.
But I'm lucky. And we've talked about this in the group that I'm in, that I also grew up with a kid I went to school with whose mom and my mom were best friends, and they both ended up with the OCD and hoarding diagnosis, and they both died of breast cancer. He's taken a different business route, and he started a business in junk removal, and that's what he does exclusively. And he's got a whole team of guys, and then we work together. He's a subcontractor for me. And then I also work with a biohazard team because you can't always do things on your own, nor would you want to. But I'm lucky that in my small community, I have those resources available, and that it's small enough that we all know each other and can identify, how we can use each other the best, possible way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and with the therapists that work exclusively with you and all of those little pieces. Like if other people are missing those pieces.
Right.
And then are trying to help clients.
Yeah. I don't know how they would be able to function without that. Those several moving parts.
Right. And then on the back end, like the business side of things, how do you technically do those moving parts, right? Like who gets paid what and how does this work and who
don't tell anybody, but I still don't understand all that. That is what I struggle with every day.
Which I'm sure is the exact same thing that every other hoarding specialist would say.
I need some kind of other business strategist. I need an exclusive tax person, I feel like, at this point, to make it all make sense to me so that, I'm not organizing from jail or something.
Right. Listen, I just had my business pay for the TurboTax professional thing, which is like $200, but for me, $200 is worth making sure that they're doing my taxes.
Right.
But it has a feature in it that anytime you need to speak live to an accountant through Zoom, you can call and ask whatever questions you want and have a conversation like this as many times as you want throughout the year.
Oh, great. Yeah. That's awesome
totally worth
resource.
$200.
Wonderful. Yeah, I will be doing that then because I am struggling.
Yes, and I was too until I found it.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And so but yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I honestly hope that this was helpful for you and that for you listening, I hope that, if there's anything that you're struggling with, that I hope that the membership that by the time this episode releases will definitely be out in the world. So come check it out. I hope that I have grown it into something super helpful. And if you all have any suggestions of things that you wish were out there when it comes to community or specific types of groups in the professional organizing niche type world that you wish was out there and that you cannot find, please email me at proorganizerscoach@gmail.com and let me know. And then in all of the links will be in the show notes to all of the things. But truly, Courtney, I'm so thankful for the service that you are providing people, and no wonder the money is an issue.
Definitely been inspired by chatting with you today, gained some confidence, and even if just explaining what I do to someone else who understands it to form some better ideas to be able to explain it to clients a little bit better.
Yeah, and to make you not feel so crazy, right? Like when you're in your own head as a professional organizer and as a business owner, you sit there and think like, I must be insane.
It's true.
Yeah. And then you meet other organizers and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm totally normal. We're all normal. We're all walking through this, life, trying to figure it out the best we can.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the episode.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Pro Organizers Coach podcast. If you've gotten any value from today's episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us grow and it warms my heart to hear from you. And make sure to stay connected with us on socials at Pro Organizers Coach. Then go to proorganizerscoach.com to find all the ways that we can help you succeed in your business. You have the power to make a difference in people's lives through decluttering and organization. Keep honing your skills, embracing those challenges, and fostering connections within our organizing community. Progress will come with every step, so keep pushing forward and you will achieve your dreams. Girl, you've got this.